Bench Opinions. Three idiots with amateur analysis.
How's it?
How's it?
And welcome back to Bench Opinions, the rugby segment. It's just the two of us today. Maxi's watching a round of ball, or actually just the parade thereof. He's in Liverpool.
Exactly.
Lighting flares, burning down buildings.
Yeah, I look forward to the recap of that trip. But yeah, alas, we now shall tackle the world of rugby.
The egg-shaped ball. And on the weekend, we had two pretty big games. It was the Challenger Cup final and the Champions Cup final. Both of them really showcasing that rugby in Europe is quite exciting and has got some black superstars in the mix.
Yeah.
I think what was interesting for me in both of those games was seeing the Lions players, or the British and Irish Lions players that were featured.
Yeah.
You had two French teams versus two England teams, which is an interesting combination. I would have thought you would have seen a Leinster in there, a Toulouse in there, a Toulon in there, but not. Alas, they weren't there.
Yeah, I think a big advertisement, particularly for the depth in French rugby, I think, as well.
Yeah. Should we start with the Challenger Cup first?
Let's start with the Challenger Cup, yes.
So we had Bath versus Lyon.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting game. Bath obviously being led by Finn Russell, which a lot of people criticize him for being a little bit too loose. But when it comes to playoffs, you've got to tighten up a bit and lead the ship with a little bit more of a more direct and more conservative playing style, if I can put it that way.
A little bit surprised at how dominant Bath were and how big the scoreline was in the end. I think
considering they even had 2 yellow cards.
Exactly. I think, yeah. I mean, hats off to Van Gaal because he was very chuffed. The coach.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Van Gaal at Bath.
It is Van Gaal at Bath, right. Yeah. I will triple check that, but I saw...
I think he was I thought he was at Glasgow.
Hold on. Fun.
But there was a South African in the team, Thomas Dutoy.
Yeah, he played really well. He got a try as well.
And I know the commentators were saying...
Yeah, Johan van Gaal is the head coach of Bath.
Oh, right.
Fantastic. I mean... I was pretty surprised. I mean, Lyon had a couple of really great results earlier on in the competition.
Mm-hmm.
Swatted a couple of teams aside, but good for Bath. I mean, I was a little bit surprised at how. I mean, they played it at the Millennium Stadium, and only had the lower tier open. So I was a bit surprised that there wasn't a little bit more interest in it because I can imagine there were definitely quite a few traveling French fans as well.
Yeah.
With Lyon and with France and the UK usually being quite well connected with travel.
Especially Bath is not that far away from Wales. I mean, what is it, like a 3-hour drive, 4-hour drive?
Oh, less. Much less actually. But yeah. Anyway, I was quite surprised that there wasn't more interest in that. And that again, sorry, I don't want to make it about South Africa, but if we had a final like that happening in South Africa, I think the
stadium would be packed.
It would be packed. Anyway, but yeah, what I did like, and this was actually something in both games, is that a little bit of, how do you say it? A little bit of understanding prevailed. No, on the refereeing side. Because there were two decisions. There was one decision for Muir for Bath under the high ball. Stupid. Like just being absolutely an idiot and taking out the Lyon player in there. Yep. I argue that could have on a bad day could have gone to red, which would have ruined the final. And then also in the Northampton and Bordeaux game, the 6 for I think it was the 6 for Bordeaux. Yeah, it was the 6 for Bordeaux who kind of there was a contact to the head and the shoulder.
Yeah.
I argue that could have also been a red, but it seemed like the referees...
So they said the mitigating factor was that the attacking player had changed direction and had sort of sidestepped into it.
Which is good. I just think it's as long as there's not clear, visible dangerous play and like malicious dangerous play, I like the fact that those kind of decisions stay a yellow.
That tackle under the high ball was that was pretty.
Yeah.
They were pretty lenient on that one.
I think
I was convinced that was
I
going to
think
be
the
red.
argument there at least is that he'd lost control, which you could see both ways. You could see it as mitigating, or you could see it as aggravating.
Yeah.
But when he collided with the player, there was no real intent. He'd essentially misjudged it and took the play out. So I think in that sense, very lucky. He did seem very worried, Muir. He was stressing up and down that try line before the yellow was confirmed. But again, I'm relatively surprised at how dominant Bath Rugby were. And amazing to great to see.
You have both the Finns playing, right? You have Finn Smith at Northampton. You have Finn Russell at Bath. They're playing in different leagues currently. Well, for this competition at least, the Challenger Cup is the lower tier version of the Premier of the European Cup. Did the performances on the weekend, do you think, sway Andy Farrell's decision in who he uses as a starting fly half for the British and Irish Lions?
Interestingly, that was a question I was going to pose to you. Is like how what do you think the weight at this stage is of these performances in trying to determine the final lineup? I think Farrell would have been watching both games, and I think you have to be impressed by how Finn Russell got it across the line against. I would argue they definitely weren't favourites, or they weren't streaks ahead. Bath.
I had actually selected Leon to take that game.
So I don't think Leon were like miles ahead in terms of being favourites, but I think the display was surprising, and I think you have to look at that as Farrell and go, okay, wow, I also think essentially when you're going down to Australia and you're playing those 3 test matches, they are 3 finals, right?
Yeah.
So I think that sways it maybe towards Finn Russell, because Farrell's not looking to build an holistic rugby program over the next 3 or 4 years.
No, it's a one-off.
They're looking to win test matches, and if Finn Russell can get the job done, then that's it. And I think that's unfortunate for Smith. I don't know how. I watched the highlights of the game against Bordeaux. Finn Smith didn't impress me or otherwise, so it's not like I felt like he was a standout or not. But sure. I think inexperienced head, particularly maybe in the first test match, because I think you would argue if the British and Irish Lions can just win the first test match and put on a good show, I think a big part of the job will be done. And I think that's why it sways me to Finn Russell, because I think he'll go there, experienced head. He's been in a British Irish Lions jersey before, captains teams, and he'll get the job done.
And now he's shown when it comes to essentially like knockout rugby finals that he can alter his playing style to accommodate for that pressure, right? You need to build scoreboard pressure, and then off of that you can start going a bit wild, but you need to get those points in first.
Exactly.
When you let's move over to the European Cup, because that was obviously the more prestigious game of the weekend. You have 2 teams that are currently star-studded, right? You've got Tommy Freeman, you've got, I guess, Slide Home you can still count as a bit of a star. You've got Finn Smith, you've got Pollock, and
had Augustus, unfortunately, who
he was unfortunately injured.
Just got injured before the game. Yeah,
but like that's already
good size,
a good handful of solid stars, right? And upcoming stars with the likes of a Pollock, for example. And then you look at the other team. You look at Bordeaux, and they've got Louis Bilbiere, you've got Damien Penaud, you've got Jalibert, you've got Luku. Sorry, I forgot Mitchell and Northampton Saints.
Mm-hmm.
You've got stars playing in stars here. It's quite the matchup.
I think French rugby should get over Dupont a little bit and should switch all their attention to Jalibert in terms of...
You mean Luku? In terms of what?
In terms of being an unbelievably good rugby player and someone who's very, very close.
I thought you were going to say for scrum half.
No.
Like, okay.
No. The dude was unbelievable in that final.
Yeah.
The way he moves with the ball, the way he kicks, out of the hand as well as, off the tee, like Dupont is injured now, and I think, and there's so much, and rightfully so. He's a great rugby player. He's at the moment, I would say, pound for pound, probably the best rugby player in the world. But I think Jalibert's lived in the shadow a little bit at least in terms of attention, not in terms of play. But what he put on in that final on Sunday was, Saturday was unbelievable.
But you've got the likes of an Intermac, right? Roman Intermac, who usually wears that 10 jersey. Would you say out with Intermac, in with Jalibert?
Look, I'm judging him off one performance. But I've heard a lot of noise around him as the competition has progressed and as Bordeaux have progressed. And I honestly think I find it hard to believe after those couple of performances now he's put in how he doesn't slide straight into that number 10, because he's not just performing in the Pro 14. He's winning major European, he's winning arguably the best club rugby competition in the world.
Right.
And I would argue that particularly he created 2 tries pretty much completely on his own.
Right.
The one where he stepped across and got it out wide, and the next one where he first made a really stupid kick but then went straight in for the steal and also went out wide. If you're creating pretty much on your own 2 tries in a final of a major competition, then you're special and people should look at you. And I think that's what Rassi gets so right, is how he talks about the collective, and how, I'm not saying the French aren't doing that, but there's so much noise around Dupont that I sometimes think, they could make progress championing some of these other dudes, because they're just a factory for talented rugby players at the moment.
In that same philosophy that you've just said, in terms of, championing a different player, and not just, or at least just spreading the load, giving attention to all of the stars that they have in their system and in their leagues and in their country. I think Luku is somebody who gets underrated because he's just sitting in the shadow of a Dupont. And I like combinations. Everybody likes combinations with like your inside centers, or your center pairing and your lock pairing, and these different things. But I mean, you can't argue where the probably the most important pairing is your 9 and your 10.
Yeah. And
I think they've always go for Intermac and Dupont because they play together. But now with Dupont injured, I think it's a great opportunity to get Luku and Jalibert in there. If Jalibert is arguably the more informed 10, and Dupont is injured anyway, put these two in together. I mean, they are really, really good. And then you've got to look at the rest of the back line. You've got Damien Penaud, who also plays for France and for Bordeaux. You've got Louis Biarré, who also plays for France. So you've already got the whole back line playing together in a league, in a club team. Just transfer that to...
And it's such a pity we're not going to see them go to New Zealand.
That is a shame.
And I think off the back of how French rugby has progressed this year even further, and how good they look and how much attention there is around rugby in France as well, it's crazy to me that there's not some sort of compromise that can be met between the clubs and the French rugby union. And it's a real pity. But alas, it is the way it is.
Yeah, it would be amazing to see the likes of like a Mark Telea, Damien McKenzie, who's playing fullback at the moment. I guess Barrett, Bowden Barrett, Geordie Barrett at 12.
Yeah,
like that's also a very exciting backline. To have those two backlines going against each other would be super exciting.
Yeah. But who knows? I mean, it's also going to be exciting in the sense that there's going to be who knows how the second string France sides matches up to an All Black side that has kind of has been a little bit sort of, we've spoken about this a lot on the podcast, an All Black side that's also quite difficult to kind of assess.
Yeah.
That's going to be interesting in and of itself. And I hope personally, I mean, I don't support the All Blacks and I don't support the French either. I hope the All Blacks, I wouldn't say humble them, but I hope the All Blacks do get it across the line and win.
Yeah.
Because I think for global rugby that will be important. It'll be just a little bit of a shift. Because I think if a second string French side goes down there and beats them
at home,
I think we might have there might be a little bit of it might be a bit of a watershed moment in global rugby, or a wake up call. I don't know. It's always a double-edged sword.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't want France to go down there with a second string team and win against the All Blacks, because then it just justifies them sending these second string teams. And that's not what anybody wants. Everybody wants to see the matchup of your first string team against the first string team. You don't want to see like your second string team getting whipped away, even if it does work in their philosophy. And we've discussed this before in terms of them sending a second string team because then they can, get a lot of sort of experience before they actually start their international careers. But that's not what you want to see as a fan.
No, and particularly New Zealand rugby fans as well, because I think there's reason as a New Zealand rugby fan to maybe not be as excited as you were during the Super Rugby days. And now on top of that, international rugby is coming with arguably the best, one of the best sides in the world at the moment. That's not even arguably, they are one of the best. I would say arguably the best. Rugby side, international rugby side in the world coming to your shores. And then you find out that it's actually just the bus driver and his friends. It's obviously not that bad, but you know what I mean? It's just not the same blockbuster headline that you would be excited by as a New Zealand rugby fan. And New Zealand also, the New Zealand rugby have announced major losses. And it's, I think they were happy with their results because it was better than last year, but I think they ran at an $11 million loss last year. Year on year in the financial period. So this, they need a pickup in attention. And yeah, it's a pity, but hopefully they can really spank. In my opinion, for global rugby, it'd be good if they can really spank them, give them a good hiding, so that it kind of resets the global order again in rugby.
For sure. Historically, France and England have never gotten along, which made the weekend all the more entertaining, right? You've got two French teams going up against two English teams. It's essentially, let's call it 50-50, right? Even though, as we said, the leagues are in different tiers. But it went out 50-50, right? The one English team won, the one French team won. There's obviously a lot of drama that I want to talk to you about. And there's a lot of off-the-ball sort of scandal that happened. And it all revolves around a 20-year-old, around Pollock. And Pollock is famous or infamous, depending on which side of the coin you're on, for doing this, like, check your pulse, are you excited, kind of. I don't actually know what that celebration is for.
It comes from football, actually.
It comes from football,
So
okay.
Diogo Dalot does it from United.
Okay.
I don't know if he started that. I know that Marcus Rashford has done it in the past. But it's essentially them saying, like, I've got ice good running to my legs. I'm like
my pulse is cold.
Exactly.
Like,
I'm ice cold, yeah. Exactly.
Right. So he's been doing that for I don't know how long now. I mean, it looks cool. He's kind of become famous for it. There's a couple memes going around. When he scored a try this weekend, which eventually got scrubbed because of I don't know if you saw it, there was a maul from a line out, and then they held the one French player back so that he couldn't make a tackle on Pollock, and then eventually he ran over the line. Anyway, he ran around, sort of calming the crowd down, like relax.
I think there was 2 tries from him disallowed. No, there was another one where he was ahead of the kicker as well, I think.
Was it him?
I think that was him. Anyway, maybe not. But yeah, I think he got 2 tries disallowed.
I thought that was Slightholm. That was ahead of the kicker. Doesn't matter. Somebody was ahead of the kicker and it didn't count. After Lyon won, after Bordeaux won, in the changing rooms, as always happens, a lot of drinks were had. Everybody was celebrating. A couple photos were taken, and the French players or the Bordeaux players were doing what is now called the Pollock sort of check your pulse sign celebration, and that was obviously sort of like a little bit of a taunt, a jibe at Pollock, at Northampton Saints. Now, a lot of people are saying it's disgusting behavior. You've won. This is not what we like to see in rugby. And other people are saying, come on, guys, it's just banter. Like, it's just a bit of piss take. It's not actually that serious. What's your stance on it? You think it's called for? Do you think it's not called for?
If I'm Pollock, I'm sitting at home and I'm smug as fuck, because that is influence, like, personified. The dude has lit the rugby world on fire.
Yeah.
In the very short period of time. I saw a podcast recently that he said he started playing rugby at the age of 15, which was like 4.5, or like seriously, that was like 4.5 years ago. Right. You know, the rise has been meteoric. He's going to the British and Irish Lions. To have that kind of influence on a game at the age of 20 means you're doing something right. And I think at the end of the day, everyone else's opinion is irrelevant. I'm telling you, Pollock is sitting at home, smug as fuck, and he's like, "This is sick."
Yeah.
And guess what? It has just increased his profile off the pitch, which is a very important factor, and I think is something that rugby in the past has lacked.
Right.
I think we need bigger personalities in rugby. I think with rugby looking to grow and become more commercially successful, and with all the investment now happening in rugby, I think these are exactly the kind of things that need to happen. And I think this is early signs that the personality of rugby is starting to shift. And I don't want it to become like football, particularly because of the behavior. I mean, I still watch football. I'm a fan of football, but I love the way people behave. But I think that kind of thing elevates the attention around rugby.
Yeah, I agree with you on all points. I first and foremost don't think it's malicious.
No,
I think it's banter.
Yeah,
and I think, as you said, it's a massive sign of respect, because the fact that a 20-year-old is riling you up so much that, you know, the whole Bordeaux team is kind of looking at like shutting him down. That's a sign of like, okay, owed to you. You know, we're gonna show it in a bit of piss take, but like massive respect to you, hat off.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I think it's a nice shift, because I don't think you've seen too much of that in rugby over its history of that kind of a situation. So
it's very interesting to see that the English, who are usually always up for a good bant, they don't see it that way. They see it as a personal attack, and like, how dare they attack a young 20-year-old, and like. But then others say, it was like, well, he's 20 years old, he's an adult, and like, maybe he shouldn't be doing those celebrations in the first place, and then he wouldn't get attacked for it.
Yeah, I think it's also just the trial by social media. I think it's so polarized that you're just going to get people on both sides of the fence. And I think particularly if a side is lost, I think there's a bit of bitterness there, and I think it'll pass. And I think, like I said, I think Pollock's just fine.
Or might give him another bit of fire just to sort of set him on the right track continue on the right track for the British and Irish Lions tour.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, that was the weekend of rugby. A big competition comes to an end. The competition where the South African teams are involved, the URC, is really kicking off now as we go into the playoffs. This weekend, we have the first round of playoffs. 3 South African teams in there. So we'll be reporting next week on the results, and if all of our teams are still in there, or if all of them are gone, or some of them there, some of them gone. Who knows?
Exactly.
All up for grabs.
Very exciting.
And also going to be interesting to see if Leinster can finally win something.
Yeah. If you want to hear how our week was, tomorrow, What a Week's Up, we have to say that we've cut leftovers from this whole show.
R.I.P.
Don't be too sad if there are major golfing events or other events.
Tennis, cricket.
Yeah, anything that we feel
1.
like that we need a special episode, we will be doing an extra segment for that. But for now, R.I.P. to the girl you used to be. Those days are over. Who did I quote there? Who sang that song, actually? Anyway.
Maroon 5.
No, R.I.P. Rita Ora. There you go. So, I've quoted Rita Ora.
And on that note,
goodbye.
Let's go.